Good morning, Internet. My name's Michael and I'm here to review some stuff for you. Today we're going to take a look at a Vampire Hunter movie from the 70s. That's right, we're taking a look at Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter. Now, if you've never seen this movie before, let me read the back so you can get a general idea. In a small village in the remote English countryside, several young maidens have been found dead, their beautiful faces horribly aged almost beyond recognition. Suspecting a supernatural evil at work, the local doctor calls on army friend and famed vampire hunter Captain Kronos, an expert swordsman formerly of the King's Imperial Guard. Aided by his expert assistant, Professor Grost, the two quickly confirm the gruesome murders are the work of a unique type of vampire, one who drains its victims not of blood, but of their youth. After forging a new lethal sword from an old graveyard cross, the vampire hunters set out to put an end to evil's reign of terror in this Hammer film horror classic. So yeah, that's actually a very good description of what this movie's about. It starts off with a small town in the English countryside. A doctor finds a woman who's dead. She had been a young woman, and then he finds her with some blood on her mouth, and she's been horribly aged very rapidly, and she dies. And this starts happening to several women in the village. So he does ask his friend Captain Kronos to come by and see what's what. And Captain Kronos is the badass of the film. He's a vampire hunter, and oddly enough he carries around a katana, even though it's like in I think it's in the 1700s in England. It's kind of unclear as to what exactly the time frame is. But yeah, he uses a katana and a normal sword too. Anyway, he travels around with his assistant, who's a hunchback, as well as being a professor of vampires. And he also picks up a young woman who's the love interest of the film because she was in a stockade for dancing on a Sunday. And he frees her, and she follows him around, and she's his other sidekick. Well, anyway, the movie continues on. They investigate what's going on. And this is where the movie actually kind of turns into a mystery a bit. In general, there's like 3 people who the vampire could be. About halfway through the film, you kind of start figuring it out, and by the end, it's actually kind of a surprise who it turns out to be. I don't want to spoil it too much, so I'll just tell you some of the greater bits of the movie. The movie is old, and it shows a little bit with the pacing. The movie's fairly slow, but it works pretty well in this movie. The atmosphere is great, the soundtrack's great, the acting's pretty good. The special effects they're not really wonderful, but they're decent enough for what they are. Mostly they don't really show too much, like blood and stuff. Captain Kronos, they do a fairly good job of portraying him as a real badass. At one point, these 3 guys in a bar are hired to kill him, and he takes them out with 2 swipes of his katana, which was pretty cool. Another part, he takes on a bunch of villagers who think he killed his doctor friend, who was a vampire at the time, and he takes them all out. He doesn't kill them, though, he just disarms them. And while that fight wasn't really very good looking, it at least portrayed decently that he's supposed to be so good he could disarm like about 10 guys rather easily. Another amusing part of this movie is that they go into detail that there's like many different types of vampires, and this vampire it doesn't drink your blood. Well, it kisses young women, bites them, they draw a little bit of blood, and it sucks the youth out of them, then they die. And they're not sure exactly how to kill the vampire. And anyway, at one point, his good friend the doctor also becomes a vampire, and they stop him, and they're trying to figure out how to kill him. They do like the stake through the heart, they try hanging him, and basically it's almost amusing and kind of horrifying the lengths they're trying to go to just to figure out how to kill the vampire. Anyway, they eventually figure out that a steel cross, they impale them in the heart with a steel cross that kills them. So of course they go to a graveyard and they steal a large cross from a tombstone, and then they forge it into a badass vampire fighting sword. So anyway, this all leads up to the big finale, where you find out that who the vampire is, and he has a big showdown. And this big showdown involves him doing a sword duel with a vampire. And the sword duel is actually pretty fun and entertaining. And also, one other unique thing in this movie is the vampire has like mind-controlling powers, where they look in someone's eyes, and he fights this by he puts a mirror on his sword, and he holds the sword up to his eyes like this, so the vampire's looking into their own reflection, and that stops them flat, which was rather unique. And another bit of interesting folklore that they made up for the movie is if a vampire steps over a dead toad, the toad comes back to life. So at one point they're burying dead toads all over around the forest trying to track the vampire. So that was kind of cool. So all in all, this is a very fun movie. I highly recommend it. I give it a 5. And anyway, stay tuned next time when I will review something else.